First, we're going to be open this morning. In our tradition, as you know, HBCUs all have a music tradition. We want to ask Ms. Yara Allen, theomusicologist for Repairs of the Breach, and she would open us in that freedom tradition of song and lifting up voice at this time.
Good morning.
Good morning.
When we're gathered like this, we always bring our ancestors into the room, especially in this fight. And so let's lift our voices and invite them into the room. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. No. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. We're gonna keep on walking, keep on talking. Ain't gonna let racist politics turn me around. No. Gonna let racist politics turn me around. We're gonna keep on. We're gonna keep on. And we'll. Yeah, ain't gonna let racism turn me around. No. We're gonna let racism turn me around. We're gonna keep on, and we'll keep on. We're gonna work. Yeah, we're gonna let nobody turn me around. No. We're gonna let nobody turn me around. We're gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom land. Ain't gonna let racist politics turn me around. No. We're gonna let racist politics turn me around. Keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom. No, we're gonna let this legislation turn me around. No, turn me around. No. We're gonna let legislation turn me around. We're gonna keep on. We're gonna keep on talking, marching up the freedom land.
Good morning. Now I'm gonna do my best to stay on my talking points, but I have a hard time sometimes going off script, especially when I'm speaking from the heart. So my name is Sean Wimberly Jr. I am from Louisville, Kentucky. I am a senior agricultural business major, minor in philosophy, and I'm on track to go to law school.
That's right.
And I serve as the former student trustee for the Board of Trustees at Tennessee State University. And with us, we have Bishop Barber, the national co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, Mrs. Latasha Brown, the co-founder of the Black Voters Matter, Reverend Dr. Frederick Douglass Haynes III, who's a part of the Rainbow Push Coalition, and Ms. Tamika Mallory, the co-founder of Until Freedom. So I've said enough at the Capitol. I think several of you all have seen me speak at the House subcommittees and the Senate subcommittees. And it's seeming that my voice as the student representative on the board has not been fully valued. As I said before, I serve as the former student trustee. We know what has happened to the Board of Trustees at Tennessee State University. And I want to first say that I appreciate the fact that we do have TSU alumni on our new board for the Board of Trustees. But I want to make sure that when I'm talking, that we understand that although our board has been given these alumni, what has happened at TSU, what has happened in these past 2 years is a reflection of our community. It shows the state of our current Black community. And the state that our university is right now is simply a product of us not thinking as strategically, moving as quickly, or being as unified as our ancestors have been in the past. We've allowed others to determine our path, and we've almost forgotten that HBCUs are our home here in America. Now, the fight to prevent the state overreach for the board of trustees has been lost. But I'm hopeful for the future of our university with new leadership in place. And then there's one issue that I have not mentioned about, and that is the underfunding crisis that we've seen across the nation for our HBCUs. So we gotta understand we have a bigger battle ahead of us. That is the fight for equitable funding. Excuse my French. But we must learn from our mistakes here, and we've done enough begging, in my opinion. Yes. And I'm gonna say this right now. Now is not the time for begging. Now is not the time to be requesting. It is our time to take what is ours. And I want you all to understand that. 2.1 billion here, 2.2 billion there, 1.5 billion, whatever. That we cannot beg anymore. That's right. They haven't given it to us in the past. So what makes you all think they will give it to us now? So I want to make sure that I've done my speaking at the Capitol, but I speak to the Black community when I say this. We can't beg anymore. And I want you all to look at the state of where our university is at right now, and understand this is a reflection of our community. I want to reiterate that. So moving forward, I challenge students to remove the distractions of this integrated world that we found ourselves in. I want you all to take time to learn about what it means to be Black in this country and the significance of our HBCUs, and to never allow anybody to determine what happens to our school without us putting up a fight. That's right. I challenge alumni to connect with us and guide us so that we may learn from our mistakes, from you all's mistakes, and build for a better future. I challenge community leaders and organizations to use your platforms and resources to highlight the importance of this issue. And I challenge administrative leaders to remember who it is that they serve, and the decision or lack of decisions will have a compounding impact on our community. And to the world, these HBCUs are our heart of our community. And we must protect them, we must build them, we must support them by any means necessary. So I'm gonna lead my talking point studies. I can get real deep into this, but I want you all to understand and hear me where I'm coming from. It is time for us to unify the students, the alumni, the community. We can't beg anymore. We can't sit on our toes. We can't let things just happen. And so again, I sit here as the former student trustee. I understand the word former. But I want you all to know that I have hope for the future for this institution. I have hope for our future board of trustees, and I have hope for our people and for our HBCUs across the country. I rest my case.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Good morning. It disheartens me as I listen to my brother's sentiments regarding our love for this university and regarding the lack of a voice that we've had so far. I'll proceed by introducing myself. I'm Darrell Taylor. I'm currently a senior business administration major, focusing in management. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee, and I currently serve as the 83rd Student Government Association President at Tennessee State University. Here's the thing. My position begins with student, right? And I'm on the Department of Student Activities. We're in student affairs. You can get where I'm hitting at?
Yeah.
I think it's integral to understand that a university operates from its students. And how can decisions be made regarding a university without the students? That's right. You put students in the focus of a department, or you give students a position or give them an ability to have a platform, and then you still take away their voice. I think it's very interesting, that the timeline of the situations regarding our university has been so consistent with each other. The second we bring up dollars that we're owed is the second, that things of our university are brought up. And I think that's interesting, because how can we simply ignore what's on paper? How can we simply ignore what the history says? And how can we simply ignore what the facts are? I think it's important to understand why students choose HBCUs. I know a lot of individuals who question that, who might not have our best interests at heart. Well, I'll answer it for you. Students choose HBCUs because this is the network of individuals where we are actually invested into. This is where we're given that opportunity. We're given that second chance. We're not blindsided and we're not thrown to the curb by the different disparities and systematic oppressions that we face on a daily basis. I think it's a way to allow us to overcome the challenges that we face within our communities, to become that change, to become that uplifter, to become a part of the new strategy, to become a part of the new expectations. I think it's about time that we understand what it means for a student to actually attend an historically Black college or university. It's pouring into the foundation that have been left for African Americans to receive education. This is what matters most, correct? As we know that education is one of the most valuable keys in this country as far as success. So there's no doubt that the most valuable key to success is being taken, or it's being underfunded, or it's being negligent. It's very interesting to me that, considering the disparities that HBCUs are facing, this isn't just Tennessee State University. Several, if not all, HBCUs are facing similar issues, and it is not a coincidence. I'll repeat that, it is not a coincidence. It must be understood that students choose HBCUs understanding the disparities that we are facing. I chose an HBCU knowing that I may not have the best housing facilities, or I may not have the best resources or advantages as it relates to financial aid. But I also chose the HBCU because it didn't matter, because I knew the community that I would have. I knew the lifelong relationships that I would develop. I knew the materials that would be invested and poured into me. I knew that the sky would be the limit when attending a university that was made for me to prosper and that was made for me to receive. But I wish that HBCUs were viewed the same outside of the HBCU. It's pretty interesting to me when we sit in the rooms with our state legislatures who make decisions about our university and have no regard and have no empathy towards what we could be facing on campus. You make decisions saying our university could be great, or it could be number one, when it is great, and when it is number one. But they don't know that. Why? Because they may not have stepped foot on our campus one day, and they would not. I think it's important to understand that despite the sacrifices that we make to attend HBCUs, we want to see them be great. My goal of attending an HBCU is to graduate and be a successful steward of this economy so that I will be able to give back to my HBCU and continue to encourage Black young men and Black young women to pursue higher education without limitations, without restrictions. It's interesting to me when I take a look back at history, and as a youth, I would say getting a little bit more comfortable with what the real world looks like. It's pretty baffling to see some of the things that are still in line with what happened 40 and 50 and 60 years ago. It's pretty interesting. We made our arrival in this country as African Americans without the ability to read or write altogether. We gained that ability still with segregation, or still with the ability not to have the same resources as our counterparts. Then when we move forward, now everything's free. We can't attend the colleges that we want to attend. We cannot have the financial aid that we desire. Then there's responses to that. And now affirmative actions put into place. Now HBCUs are continuously being severely underfunded. I am not understanding when things will finally change. I'm not understanding how many generations that it'll take to beg, or the generations that it'll take to plead, or take to advocate for us to finally get what we deserve as equal citizens as this country. It's pretty interesting to me because once upon a time we were identified as 3/5 of a human being. Well, if you're only investing in us a quarter of the way, then maybe you still see us as 3/5 of a human being. It does not make sense to us as students why we don't deserve the same quality of a college education because we decided to go somewhere that we feel that will pour into us and that will invest into us. I should not be able to look at other state institutions that are governed with the same dollars that we are, and their campuses look 10 times better than ours. How does that feel to a young Black man and a young Black woman that is looking for their college choice? They go to a HBCU and it's not the most appealing. And they head to the predominantly white neighboring institution, and it's everything that they can imagine, the promised land for education. I don't think that should be ignored, and we should continue to ignore that. I'm tired of the distractions. I'm tired of these conversations. I began my term on this conversation, and I'm ending my term in the same conversation. I am exhausted of saying the same thing. we're tired of saying the same things, but we're going to continue to overcome because we've made it here. And one of my favorite quotes, if not us, then who? And if not now, then when? That's it. And I think it's important to understand that the time is now, and it will be every second of every day until we get what we understand is rightfully ours. So I'll leave you with this. My goal as Student Government Association hasn't been to change the world. It's only been to make the student experience on my campus better day by day. And what I find amongst the confusion and the anxiety of the students is that we just want to be heard. We just want to have a seat at the table. We do not want to continue to hear that we support the students and we want to see what's best for the students and then continue to not see ourselves being supported or continue not to see what's best for us being poured into us. We don't want this to be just a story. We don't want this to be just in a news page. We don't want this to be just a headline or an opportunity to say this is our next big thing. We want this to be an opportunity for students to finally be heard, for students to finally be recognized, for funds to finally be given, and for our universities to be treated equally, despite the excuses, despite the pointing fingers, despite the myths, the stories. We're tired of it. As students, we are ready to be heard, and when you are ready to hear us, we'll begin the conversation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. These powerful students have opened up for us what the real issues are. And we received an invitation to come and be with them on today. I think you heard them say, irregardless of what the legislature has done the other day, the fight still continues. The fight still continues. I am Rev Bishop William Barber with Repairers of the Breach. And we have here today Roland Martin, we have Dr. Freddie Haynes, we have Latasha, where's Latasha Brown, and Tamika here today. But I want to settle us in a couple of places before we move. Number one, we're here today to say to all alumni and students, it's time that we sound an alarm and fight back in every state. Number two, in every state, because all of the colleges that are underfunded, except for the Black University in Oklahoma, are in the former Confederate states. All of them that are underfunded. $12 billion, almost $13 billion of underfunding. And every one of those states should have Black and white and brown people bringing lawsuits to guarantee that those schools are funded properly. All of them should be. We're here today to say that everybody that's concerned about this issue, and especially students, need to be registered to vote and use those votes to determine who sits in these legislatures. And where they stand on HBCU should be a major factor in whether or not they get our votes. We're here to say, I was a student government president, and I remember when we fought that the students had an automatic seat. It wasn't chosen by the trustee board or the governor. The student had an automatic seat. In fact, when I was there, the student government president was automatically a member of the board of trustees. The students ought to have an automatic seat that they pick, not just pick for them. And there ought to be voting precincts on every campus, because students can vote where they go to school. That's what the law says. And then lastly, I think time, Roland, Latasha, and others, that we bring back something we did in the 70s, and that was we used to have Black College Day, where every year all Black colleges simultaneously marched on their state legislature and demanded funding and met with their legislature. It's time to renew that again and call for that kind of activism. Now let's be clear real quickly. We are here because of a guy named Justin Morial. 1862, he passed the Land Grant Agriculture and Mechanical College Act. 1862, Freddie. But it did not guarantee African Americans could attend. It took 28 years after the Civil War for a second Morial Act. And that act said either you had to allow African Americans equity in going to land grant schools that the federal government gave the land, or you could create, and out of that, there are 19 historically black land grant institutions. So the whole reason we're here is because of denying.
That's right. That's right.
The whole reason we're here is because of funding. And here's the truth. This underfunding didn't just start 2 years ago.
That's right.
The truth is that other than the initial land grants, black schools went without government land grant funding until 1970. When Congress, not the state legislature, when Congress finally passed legislation to give them an annual appropriation. So the predominantly white schools that were land grant, they got their money from 1862 on. But HBCUs that were land grant didn't even begin to get any kind of equity and appropriation until 1970. That's the challenge that we had. And then lastly, hear this. According to various laws enacted in 1887, federal land grant universities funding must be matched. This is what the law says, my lawyer friend. The law says that it must be matched from non-federal sources. That means the state. In 2020, Tennessee General Assembly provided $69.4 million in land grant dollars, $2,460 per student to the University of Tennessee, where 77% of the students are white, more than 4 times the match. You hear what I just said? The law said you have to match it. They went 4 times above the match. But TSU and its 6,000 students got just $8.7 million, $1,318 per student from the same state in 2020. Only 12% above the match. It wasn't until 2017 that the Tennessee State Legislature began meeting its matching requirement at all for Tennessee State, and they've never met the match. And when the federal government sent a letter to the schools, Governor Bill Lee, who says he loves the values of Dr. King, that's what he said. He said that he wasn't sure whether he was going to accept the $2.1 billion figure as fact. As fact. As fact. The governor right now is inside the Capitol at the bottom of the steps. Yeah. Call him over here and tell him, come over here and commit to these HBCUs. Commit $2.1 million. $2.1 billion. And Senator Bo Watson, who chaired the Ways and Means Committee, said he's not buying it. He said he's not buying it. They don't owe that money. But history is clear. And my brother just said, we can't keep begging. We have to have legislation, litigation, and agitation. Will y'all say that with me? Legislation, litigation, and agitation. We need it in Kentucky. We need it in Tennessee. We need it in Mississippi. We need it in Virginia. We need it in Maryland. We need it in Arkansas. We need it in Missouri. We need it in Oklahoma. We need it in South Carolina. We need it in Alabama. We need it in Georgia, West Virginia, Louisiana, Texas, Florida, North Carolina. Agitation, litigation, and legislation. Dr. Latasha, where's Latasha?
Thank you so much. Let me thank, first of all, our outstanding student leaders from Tennessee State for the invitation to come and stand in solidarity with you. You are not in this fight by yourself. Amen. And so we thank you because you represent the best in leadership. And you are doing it in spite of the fact that your beloved institution is being plundered through underfunding. And yet we are still producing excellence in leadership. So we salute you for your leadership and for your work. Let me also say thank you to Bishop Barber for his outstanding leadership. Bishop Barber is always on the case. And so thank you, Bishop Barber. Thank you, Roland Martin. Thank you, Latasha. all of these leaders represent the fact that we have come from around the country, because even though Tennessee State and the Tennessee legislature is now the face of this civil rights issue, it is a nationwide issue. I come from Texas. We have a land grant institution in Texas, Prairie View A&M University. And I'm simply saying, as a proud alum of an HBCU, our HBCUs have always performed in an outsized fashion, outperforming in a real sense the limited resources that they have been given. In a real sense, HBCUs have been guilty of doing much with little. Yes. And as a consequence, land grant colleges, which were founded, thank you, Bishop Barber, for that history lesson. But the rationale behind land grant colleges was to ensure that these colleges would make a contribution to the state where they found themselves. Tennessee State University has made an invaluable contribution. You can't think of the Tiger Bells doing what they did during the Olympics without connecting them to Tennessee State University. Tennessee State University with Wyoming Titus, not to mention Carl Rowan, not to mention Oprah Winfrey. We could call the roll of the contributions that have been made by graduates of this institution, and yet they have made it being underfunded. Imagine what would happen if Tennessee State University was invested in a way that was commensurate in with what you do, the University of Tennessee. Imagine what would happen if these young men had the same resources, the same kind of access to housing, access to scholarships that those in other institutions have. We're simply saying that this nation, this state, is robbing itself of good resources when we do not treat Tennessee State University as we do others. And so we have come here to say with Bishop Barber and with these students that we're going to agitate, we're going to litigate, and we're going to legislate until education is equitable for all of us. And so, Bishop Barber, I simply add to what you said. Yes, we want education through agitation, litigation, and legislation. And we're going to have it, and we ain't going to let nobody turn us around. I am Frederick Douglass Haynes III, President, CEO of Rainbow Push Coalition, and you know the legacy of Reverend Jesse Jackson, also an alum of an HBCU, and that HBCU that produced him. Imagine what would happen if that HBCU was well resourced and it still produced a Reverend Jesse Jackson. And I'm simply here to say that we ain't gonna let nobody turn us around. And we're saying to Tennessee, we're saying to Texas, we're saying to every state, in the words of my mama, don't steal my eyeballs and then blame me because I can't see. Don't steal from our students and then wonder why we're not producing what other colleges are doing. We're doing it anyhow. Imagine what we would do if there was equity when it comes to funding our HBCUs. And that's what we're here, that's what we're calling for. We've been able to see even when you stole our eyeballs. Imagine what would happen if you gave us equitable funding. And that's what we're calling for. Yes, sir.
The first thing I did right was the day I started to fight. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on. I just want to stand in that spirit and that spirit of our people at these land grant institutions, the spirit of our people to always stand and keep our eyes on the prize and to know that we can't back down and we've got to fight. And so in this space, one of the things I want to ask is I want to ask a question. I want to ask a question while we're here to the state legislature. Why is Tennessee State being treated differently than UT? And you ask me, what do I mean by that? Well, let me tell you what I mean by that. Why is it that here we're hearing that part of the audit was as a result of, yes, there was housing, that the state, they accepted too many students and they needed extra housing. Well, in fact, the University of UT actually had more students that they needed, and they had the money, guess what, to purchase and buy a hotel. Why did TSU have to go back to the legislature? Because their money that they did not have $2.1 billion, and they had to go back to ask them for resources for the hotel. Perhaps they could have purchased a hotel as well if they had gotten the $2.1 billion. And I question whether even UT was able to purchase a hotel, because perhaps some of the money that was meant for this university actually got allocated to that university, right? Other resources. So as we stand here in this space, even the audit itself, let's just break down this whole idea of the audit. The state paid $2 million for an audit that the discrepancy actually accounted to $4,000. This is not about a discrepancy, and there were discrepancies at other universities. This was not about this. This is an attack. And so what we're seeing all across this nation, this attack on DEI, it's not just an attack on DEI as a program, it's an attack on diversity all across this nation. There's an attack on equity all across this nation. And there's an attack on inclusion all across this nation. And so we're standing here now on the backdrop of TSU, but we're saying there's $13 billion that's owed us. Give us what we owe, what you owe us. Give us what we've worked hard for. Give us what we contributed as taxpayers in this state and all across the nation. Give us what our hard work has actually produced. We're not going to take it anymore. We're keeping our eyes on the prize. We're going to be in the streets. We're going to be organizing. When our rights are under attack, you know what we do? We organize and fight back. When our rights are under attack, what do? We fight back. When our rights are under attack, what do? We fight back. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Latasha Brown with Black Voters Matter.
I'm Roland Martin, founder of the Black Shirt Network, also host of Roland Martin Unfiltered. We have been covering this story for the last 15 months when other national media has been silent. But I have a series of questions, and the first question really is for all of you who are reporters here at the state capitol. You should be asking every single Republican and Democrat, how many of you have ever stepped foot on the campus of Tennessee State? You should be asking each one of them. You should literally put the rollers and say, how many of you have actually been to the campus of Tennessee State? How many of you have attended a commencement at Tennessee State? How many of you have actually organized a legislative town hall on the campus of Tennessee State? But I can guarantee you, nearly every Republican and Democrat in this legislature has been to the University of Tennessee. I can guarantee you they've been to many of those campuses all across this state. There's only one public HBCU, so it's not like there's a lot they have to actually visit. It's just one in this city right here. And the reason that's important because it's hard for folks sitting in this Capitol to make decisions about a place they've never seen. And they haven't talked to anybody there. But also, I want y'all to start asking the questions, all of y'all who are reporters here, when did they start caring about Tennessee State? Was it when they started asking for the money?
That's right.
See, they were ignoring the school for all of these years. But until that committee said they were owed $544 million, all of a sudden, there was high interest in what was happening at Tennessee State. And then when they began to ask for just half of the money, then folk began to say, well, we need audit. Ask yourself, how many state schools have had 5 audits in 1 year? If you want to understand America, you got to follow the money. If you ain't discussing money, you ain't having an American conversation. So whenever you start talking about the money, all of a sudden folks' attitude begin to change. And that's what we now begin to see. You cannot show me, and I've covered city government, county government, state government, federal government. You cannot show me anywhere in America when an audit was done and no fraud was uncovered and the entire board of trustees was removed. See, I'm not satisfied that the new board is constituted of all Tennessee State graduates, because I have to question how they got there. Then I have to question who picked them. Then I got to question who passed the law that created that environment. And so all of y'all should be asking different questions. Y'all should be asking them, why not? Why all of a sudden so much interest in Tennessee State? You also need to be asking different sets of questions. You should be asking this legislature, how can you deny a school of equal funding when they literally have hundreds and thousands who are trying to get in? Tennessee cannot compete economically with America without an educated workforce. So here you have a school doing that, and they literally are trying to starve them and choke them from the resources. So you've got to be challenging them in a different way. But see, the only reason you can challenge them that way is when you, who are members of the media, actually give a damn about Tennessee State. So you've got to now be asking your news directors and general managers and editors, how often are you covering what's happening at Tennessee State? Do you show up to Tennessee State when there's controversy, or do you show up when there are other things that are happening that are for the good of the institution? You must begin to say, if we call for equal funding, then you got to have equal coverage. And it can't just be all about orange in this state. You must also be focused on blue and white as well. We cannot have strong institutions if they are constantly under attack. That's right. The fact of the matter is, this university and HBCUs nationally are under attack. And what has happened in this state, I promise you, you're going to see happen in other states. Because what we have seen Republicans do, they have one test case in one state, and then now take it around the country. When they passed stand your ground laws in Florida, it went around the country. When they passed voter suppression laws in Georgia, it went around the country. When they begin to attack black voters in North Carolina, they begin to go all around the country. So we see the pattern that is unfolding right now here in Tennessee. And so they are going to be challenged at every opportunity. And reporters here, you need to be asking, how can this legislature find $500 million to fund a football stadium for a billionaire owner, but cannot fund a full $584 million for an institution? You cannot care more about football in Tennessee than you do educating the students of Tennessee. You cannot say you are against DEI, but you don't mind DEI Saturday at the University of Tennessee. Understand what we are seeing is an outright attack. We ain't going nowhere. We built it, and as Dr. King said, be true to what you put on paper, and understand we will be back. It will be challenged, and don't be surprised when we show up in your cities and your towns come election time.
Yes. Thank you, Lord. Members of the media. 3 things I want you to pay attention, and we'll take questions. What we're talking about is not our opinion. It is the law.
Yes.
The whole part of the second Morial Act was to ensure that if white institutions wouldn't accept black students, that HBCUs could be built. And in 1887, it said that money had to come. Another audit I want you to pay attention to. It wasn't the HBCUs that said they're owed $13 billion. It was the federal government that did an audit.
Right.
The federal government did the audit and sent letters. Right. Am I right?
Yep.
Yes. Sent letters to all the governors and state legislatures saying you are deficient and in violation of the funding formula that is supposed to undergird HBCUs, and you have been operating in an inequitable fashion to the tune of $13 billion recently.
That's right.
Because probably more than that if you look at it all the way through history.
Yep.
But the tune of $13 billion recently. Pay attention to that order. This extremists, I don't call them Republicans, but they love to claim they are party of Lincoln. Well, Justin Laurier was a Republican, but he was a Lincoln Republican. What these Republicans are doing is counter what they try to claim as their history. It's counter. It's not what they should be doing. They should be investing. And then lastly, if you have a business, Freddie, Latasha, if I'm not mistaken, the one thing you want to do with a business is grow it. And you don't get penalized for growing a business. If you're a farmer and you plant some seed, you want to grow it. And you don't get penalized if the seed goes in as corn and comes up as a corn stalk. You don't get penalized. If you have some animals, a little puppy, you want that puppy to grow. If you have a child, you want that child to grow mentally, physically, and you don't get penalized for saying the child grew up.
Right.
TSU is getting penalized for growing. Whoever heard of such? I'm monitoring my language. Whoever heard of such? To be penalized for growing an institution, for adding students, for creating an academic atmosphere and a moral atmosphere that is a magnet, that is attracting students. That's what this legislature is done. They are penalizing these young men, president and all, for growing. But understand this very clearly. Come on, Tamika, I see you. Understand this. By attacking these students, attacking these universities, you have planted another seed, and it will grow. It will grow into litigation. It will grow into agitation, and it will grow into voter participation. Because one thing is true, every time in history, we have been forced to fight. We do, and we win.
Yes.
The fight is on. It has to be on, because we will not allow folk to penalize us for success.
Yes.
I have Tamika Mallory here. She's our last speaker. She just got in, and then we'll take questions from the media.
Thank you so much, and I'm so apologetic to this group, a great group of organizers, for being late, but I just flew in, so I ran here as soon as I could. First of all, I'm going to start by thanking Rev Barber and also Roland Martin for making sure that we pulled together, and no matter what was happening on our schedules, where we were in life, it was important that we be here today and that we spend this day not just supporting the students of TSU and this institution that we are specifically in this state to focus on, but HBCUs across the nation that need the voice of all of us, all the organizers, the advocates, and every single student and administrator needs to be outside of the buildings, on the ground, getting together with people in the local community to say that this is not just a college issue, it is not just a student issue, it is a community issue. And the reason why we know it's a community issue, I've heard I was running in, I could hear Roland talking about the attack in general that is happening across the board against our communities. The banning of books and the banning of really our stories in the educational system. The attacks against diversity, equity, and inclusion. The defunding of our programs, voter suppression. Actually, the other piece is the narrative is shifting around Black folks and our needs and our contribution to this nation. There is an attempt to erase us, and we must be clear that it is coordinated and it is actually very strategic if you're paying attention. And so we must be the same. We've done this before, brothers and sisters. We are attacked constantly. What we cannot allow is the naysayers to get in our minds and tell us that we're uneducated, we're unqualified, and that we do not deserve to reap the benefits for a nation that we built. We built this nation on our backs. And as my sister Angela Rye would say, we did it for free. But we will not stand by and allow it to be for free. We didn't have a choice back then. We have one now to say you will pay us, you will respect us, and you will invest in our communities and especially in our young people. I want to make sure that I talk to young folks who are listening today and let you know, from a group called Jodeci back in the days, they used to say, "Can I talk to you?" Yes. I want you to hear loud and clear that this is your moment. It is your moment to get organized to fight back. Get organized, get angry, but get together with one another across states and ensure that you are taking an example out of the TSU Students book where they got together and said, no, you will not do what you want with our institution. And we have to make sure that that spreads and that the message is across the nation that now is the time. We cannot be on the back end. We must be on the front end, and that's why we came here today to support you. But this fight is about you. You have the energy, you have everything you need to stand up and fight for yourselves. And my organization, Until Freedom, will be here with all of you. We will continue to fight with you. We will not leave you in this fight alone. And we will go from your campuses to the State House, and we will ensure that when it comes time to vote, we will remember who was with us, who was standing here today, and who was not. God bless you all.
Exactly. Let me invite Brother Wimberly and Darrell up and our other speakers to come up and make one more clear point. Come on in. There are over 100 HBCUs operating in 50 states. They enroll over 300,000 students, 80% of whom are Black. 15% of the bachelor degrees earned by Blacks come from HBCUs, 6% of the masters, 12% of the PhDs from HBCUs. But we also know, and this is part of what we're saying here today, this is about state housing.
Right.
I want to say this clear. Many of these state legislators are not winning their offices because people are voting. Right. They're winning because people are not voting.
That's right. That's right.
Reverend Gordon is here with the Poor People's Campaign, and one thing that we've done is a study, and we now know that over 40% of the people in this state that vote are poor and low-wage voters. And if just 20%, hear me now, just 20% of those who have not voted were to vote around issues like HBCUs and living wages and health care, you could determine who sits in the governor's office, who sits in the legislature. Don't believe the hype that we don't have power.
Right.
The fact of the matter is most southern states are not red states or blue states, they are unorganized states where we have not organized our power. And Tamika is right. If young folk and all of us get together and organize our power and don't believe the negatives that say we don't have power. We have unused power. And let it be said that we are not going to stay home. Do not allow people to get into these state legislatures by default. Make them have to come through your votes. Make them have to come through your power. Make them have to come through your strength. That's right. No unopposed. We need you to run. We need to rail. I'm serious. Yeah. Are there any questions from members of the media?
Before
Yes, sir.
Before questions, I want to thank all the guests here that came. And Darrell and I, we've been working hard to make what's been happening at TSU become a national issue. We've been trying to garner support from all different organizations. around this city, around the state, and around the country. So to see what we've gotten to at the end of our term,
You all did it.
so I want to say that I appreciate that. But I want to reiterate my point. When I first got on this mic, y'all had me a little nervous. I'll be honest with y'all, because this issue is not only something that I find very important, I find it to where I want to make sure that when I say, you all hear me. For those of you on the camera watching in from the calls, I want you all to understand how important what has happened here at TSU, what's happening to our other HBCUs. We cannot allow people who have not stepped foot on our campus, who don't understand our culture,
That's it.
to make decisions for us. Our HBCUs, and I'll say it again, I'll say it for the last time, our HBCUs are our home. TSU has allowed me to travel to Africa, to Japan, to across the country, and I'm starting to understand the world as a student. And I'm seeing the importance of this HBCU. So I just want to make sure I put that there for everyone to hear it. All right, so I'll leave it at that. And listen, that's my brother has something to say. I can't mention it on camera.
Okay.
But you all.
Well, I'm asking, we want to save you some money.
We'll talk
on family. Okay. All right.
Before we proceed with questions from the media, we would like to thank all the organizers of this event, everyone who has helped and contributed to the support system that we have as we continue this initiative. So I do want to thank the Equity Alliance, the TSU NAACP chapter, as well as the Nashville NAACP chapter, as well as our Student Government Association at Tennessee State University. We can't proceed now with questions from the media. Thank you all.
Let them go to the questions to the students first. Any questions?
Yeah, question. You mentioned lawsuit. Who has standing to sue? Like, I know it's happened in other states. Who does that? Who would sue?
Well, that's one of the things. There are various people that have standing, and partly is citizens have standing, black folk have standing, civil rights groups have standing. So what we're doing is going to investigate in every state who stand. There are already suits going on. But what we're saying is that, and Rose will come up, there needs to be a coordinated form of litigation, because this is not something that's just happening here or there, it's happening everywhere.
So right now in Georgia, Black Caucus in Georgia filed state against the state of Georgia to receive the money for the land grant institutions. Fort Valley State is owed $603 million. And so in Georgia, they estimate the HBCUs there, the land grant have been cheated out of in excess of $2 billion. And so that's the case. You also, when the lawsuit that took place against Maryland, the school couldn't sue, but that was an external group that sued. That's how they got that $400 million settlement there. Alvin Chambliss sued in Mississippi. So you've had a number of examples all across the country in Alabama, Mississippi, Maryland, and Georgia, where states have been sued for the lack of funding to HBCUs.
And one of the things that can also happen is these students right here, we have lawyers are looking at, they have standing. Yes. They have standing, but they're students, especially the ones that are still in school. And the courage that a state black caucus, if it has the courage, can sue its own legislature.
That's right.
And should. Right.
Okay, remember. Okay, Tennessee State, they are employees of the state.
That's right.
So they can't sue. So again, I'm gonna use Maryland as an example. There was an external group that sued in Maryland. Coppin State, Morgan State, of course, Bowie State, as well as Eastern Shore. They were not parties of the suit, but individuals who were alumni, as well as Black Caucus and others, so they were participants in that. So the school cannot sue, but as Rev Barber said, parties can sue, and yes, they should. The reality is, if you're waiting, first of all, black folk have been waiting since the land grant schools were created in the 1800s. And so the Tennessee Black Caucus, and I challenged Representative Harold Love on my show last week, they should be filing a suit. If this legislature will not spend the $2 billion, they need to sue the legislature and take them to court and put them under depositions and then say, why won't you give them the funding? Because when you do that, now you're being examined how they fund every other public institution.
Yes.
So I think this is a larger issue, and this is for the students, Darrell and Sean. Can you speak more to, I know we said this is an issue across the world, across the state on HBCU campuses, but what's your call to action so that we can get students not only from Tennessee State, Fisk University, Philander Smith University, what can we do, American Baptists, to put this call out? And I'm not saying everything don't need to be on camera, but how can we strategically organize to get these students, you know, to understand this is important? Because sometimes, you know, you all are students. It's much more than just, you know, coming up to the Capitol, but putting the urgency out there that this is important. Like, this is really important. So
yeah, I'll go first. So I mentioned it when I first spoke about challenging students. The generation now is 2024. Times have changed. You can't go to students and say, hey, read this large paragraph about what's happening, because we know students aren't going to do it. So how we operate as student leaders, how we move as students who are on our campus, I think I said earlier, we got to challenge these students that you got to understand what it means to be Black in America and what it means to be at the HBCU. So how we get to that point, I think it starts with the student leadership. It starts with you know, how our campuses are. And are you at ABC by chance? Or?
no, I'm a graduate of Philander Smith University.
Yeah. So for the students who are there on campus, right, our whole experience can't just be about the fun and games. Because we're going to miss these opportunities. We're going to allow people who have not been on our campus to make decisions for us. So to answer that question, we've been working hard to try to figure that out. I think it's going to take some more action, working with organizations, working with alumni. I mentioned that earlier about the whole collective, but as students, we have to take the initiative. And what him and I have done is learning these issues, trying to figure out what's going on, what's the next step, what can we do, instead of just scrolling on TikTok. So I mean, that's the hard truth, and we're not the generation of the past, but the issues we're facing are still the same of the past. So how we strategize is we're trying to figure all that out.
Let me say one thing after Darrell. And Darrell, you have something I want to say something. Okay. History is a great teacher. And Dr. Haynes and I had shared this with Roland, and we were going to share it at some point with others. In 1960, students went to Shaw University in Raleigh, right, closed the doors and had a strategic meeting. That's it. Ella Baker was there not to control the conversation, that's right, but to make sure that the students could have the conversation. And students organized SNCC. Dr. Haynes and I have been talking about, I was at Lincoln University a few weeks ago, and the students up there walked 87 miles to their state legislature. In Pennsylvania, Lincoln University in Pennsylvania. Huh? That's right, okay. And there are two, that's right. You gotta make sure you get the right one. The one that Thurgood Marshall graduated from. Pennsylvania. That's right, Langston Hughes, is that right? All right. I'm messing with them. But they walked. Now, the administration didn't want them to do it at first. And rightfully so, because they was concerned about them as students. You know, they're the show. But they did it, and they forced that legislature. While I was there, the students there said, we sat around afterwards, talked about an hour. And I called Dr. Haynes and said, you know, we need to convene students from every one of these land grant colleges to a closed door strategic, not to tell them what to do, but to pay, if we got to fund it, because students got money, they got to pay for books and stuff. We need to fund them to come together and let them strategize about what kinds of power and step. You heard me mention Black College Day. That came out of a strategy session. Yes. Right. But one thing we know is that, as both of these young men have said, this moment can't be missed. And I want to say to you, I'm older now, 61. But I was a student government president and a member of the board of trustees of my land grant institution. I remember when we fought because they wouldn't put a precinct on our campus. So we marched 1,200 students to the precinct they had. There you go. And then demanded the next year we had one on the campus. I remember when they wouldn't put a student on the board of trustees. So we fought to make it a law. That's the kind of strategy that's got to happen. And I know Dr. Haynes, I believe I can hear Latasha in the back, and Tamika and Roland. We're gonna work on pulling that together. That's right. But that we won't discuss all of that out here. Yep. Because anybody just think they got all the answers, well then where you been? Nobody has all the answers. But But if we can get think about getting all of the students represented from these 19 land grants in the room.
That's right.
The genius of that,
That's
the
right.
brilliance of that.
That's right.
And I want to commit today that we're going to make that move.
right.
And then when we come out of that room, they're going to tell y'all what the strategy is and what we do. Yeah, come on, let's talk.
You know, I also want to shift our narrative around young folks, that young folks aren't organized. We're here because young people have been organized. That's right. And so sometimes what happens is that young folk are doing the grunt work, and on the back, we don't see it, right? But at the end of the day, movements have always started with a committed few folks have seen a vision and cared when it wasn't sexy, when it wasn't cute. And at the end of the day, what we've seen is that even here, there's some organizations like I Love the Sister Equity Alliance. They actually have a TSU organizer that they've actually put here that's been organizing with some of the young folks. Some of the young women like Sister Amber right here have been working for 3 months where they've literally been organizing folks on the ground. I'm saying this because young folks, literally, you are the way that you all are moving the world. That I want to share this, that young people do care. We've been seeing, we've been getting the phone calls, we've been supporting some of the work that's on the ground. And so it's a matter of, we're doing a larger call, not just for young folk, all of us should care about this. The alumni, if we have graduated or benefited, and that should all of us, from HBCUs, this is our call to action too, that we've got to stand behind. Even if we went to a PWI, you have benefited from the brilliance of Black folk who have graduated from these HBCUs. And so this has to be a call to action for all, that we stand behind these students who've been doing the organizing, we stand behind these students who literally are standing in the gap. Some of them haven't had the resources. They have not known what to do other than literally organize their peers. And so I just want to lift that up because we've seen that that's how we've made change. There's never been a movement in this country or in the world that was not led by young folk. There's never been a movement. And so once again, we find ourselves in this position. We've got to support them.
Even the one that's the day Easter Monday, even the one that Jesus led with young folk. And what I'm saying too is the same thing Latasha said. If you go to North Carolina, students at A&T are mobilized. Yep. Elizabeth City State, where they tried to take over. We came here by invitation today of students. That's right. Not to move beyond students.
That's right.
And when we say coming together, it's not, you don't come together because there's no movement. You come together because there are movements to help connect them. That's right. That's the difference. That's right. You come together to connect them so that the students in Pennsylvania are connected with the students in North Carolina, and the students in North Carolina are connected. And our job as graduates are to help. That's what was the genius of the 1960 meeting. Right. If you see on this list, it tells you the 4 things that we're talking about. Nobody, this is not even a competition about who gets a headline or who doesn't. Right. We facing the helliest attack of defunding. And when what attacks ought to do is bring you together. Bring you together. Because I've got, that's real quick. We've got 9 in North Carolina. Yep. And even though we got 9 HBCUs in North Carolina, we got a battle all the time. That's right. Last question. Question over here.
So this is for Darrell and Sean. I'm wondering if you've spoken with students at other HBCUs who have been underfunded, part of that $13 billion federally, and if so, what those conversations have looked like so far.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for that question. So yes, as a student government president, I am in a consistent networking and consistent conversation with other student leaders at our neighboring HBCUs and then other HBCUs across the country. And we have had discussions to this capacity as to what the action plan would look like. And of course, things look a little bit different from state to state and from legislature to legislature. But I think the common ground altogether is that students are the leaders of these initiatives, and it's important to continue educating our bodies. That's something that we've been working on primarily at Tennessee State, is to consistently educate students on what this means for our university and what these decisions actually are. So we do plan as the next generation of leaders approaches the table, and a lot of those elections are taking place currently. We're passing down the knowledge that we've gained. We're passing down the conversations that we've had with legislatures, and essentially just being that support system for the next set of student leaders that are already equipped and already prepared to face on these issues.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. I have one thing. You also need to keep in perspective. There are multiple generation TSU graduates. Yes. and they literally are saying the same story. So when you have grandparents, parents, and their children complaining about the exact same issue, that explains to you historical underfunding. And so what these students are saying, they don't want their children who will say, I want to go to Tennessee State, to be fighting the exact same battle that they are fighting. Last point, the Nashville movement, it was in this city.
All right.
HBCU presidents told those students, if y'all join the civil rights movement, we're kicking you out of college. So that actually happened. So we also got to keep in mind what this city birthed in terms of student movements. We're going to be tonight, we're broadcasting for 2 hours. So we're going to have more students going to be there. Other folks are going to be there. We're at Pleasant Green Baptist Church, 1410 Jefferson Street from 5 to 7. And the whole conversation is focused on what we talked about here. So there'll be more voices there, and they'll be talking about, again, what they're actually moving forward. Because even though the legislature has made this move, you got to keep in mind, you also have the potential legal action because the Tennessee student, the representative on the board, is actually chosen by the university. Right. So how can the legislature get rid of a student trustee that they don't pick? The governor does not actually pick the student trustee. So again, understand, y'all got to be asking a different set of questions. How can the legislature remove a student trustee that they do not have the actual legal authority to appoint?
So we also want you to know that on Wednesday, at Black Voters Matter, say blackvotersmatter.org, there's going to be a virtual teach-in, all right?
Yes,
virtual teaching, what time?
6 o'clock.
At 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. Eastern. So we want everybody that's listening on this media to hear this. Lastly, 6:30 p.m. 6:30 p.m. We came here, I want you to understand, when Roland put out the call to join, to stand on this hollow ground, because so much was birthed from here. And we are in a time when there will be multiple birthings. The song we sung, and y'all, you might come and close us out. The song we sung was Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Around. And really, it's ain't gonna let nobody turn us around.
That's right.
So wherever you can fight, we need to be fighting and standing and moving and acting. And then lastly, you know, they say this is April Fool's Day. But we came here today to say we ain't being fooled.
Yeah.
We're not being fooled about what's really and what the underfunding really is and what the battles really are. Brother Wembley and Darrell, you all represent, man, just power. And what I want to say is we will not create a false dichotomy that only serves to undermine our fight together. It's not versus old versus young and young versus old. We is the most important word in the justice vocabulary. If we stand together, we can fight back and beat anything together. Y'all, you want to close us out in your own way?
So let's do this. Let's start with, and this is representative of all the HBCUs, but real quick, a little something for TSU, and this extends to the other schools as well. I'm so glad.
Yeah. All right.
I go to TSU. All right. Yeah.